Welcome back to the Iron Sights podcast. My guest today is Dustin Mowery. Dustin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, brother. I appreciate it. It's good to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. I think I was telling you this. I was a little caught off guard. We were just out at the Combatives Summit 2025 out in Mississippi at American Top Team in D'Iberville, and there were several sections there being taught on all kinds of things. And man, I've been heavily involved with making plans to get out there and be there again for the second time. I was there last year. And nice. I don't know how this happened, but like as many times I looked at an instructor list, I didn't realize you were going to be there. Like I don't know how that happened. That just maybe just
flying under the radar, man.
It's also like I've had way too many things on my radar, so that could be part of it. But I walked in and I looked over at the Vertex table because Vertex was there sponsoring the event. Jim was there, and I was like. I was like, wait, I think that's Dustin Mowery. And then I went back to my schedule and I went, oh, Dustin's actually teaching here. So it was really great to connect with you there, man. And so it is. It's very good to see you again. Thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, you too. Absolutely. No problem.
So I immediately fanboyed and I ran over and I was like, dude, like you're here. This is awesome. Like I'm going to get to, make a personal connection here and chat a little bit. And we had an opportunity to chat. I also had an opportunity to take your section on, which was specifically you were delivering instruction and information around dry fire, how to do that well, and how to take some skills and some tools away to practice and make dry fire productive, right? Not just an exercise in doing dry fire, but how do you turn the exercise of dry fire into productive, building on progressive type of things. And it's always interesting for me to watch guys like you break down the fundamentals and just kind of get back to the basics and I listen intently to how it's being delivered. And I really enjoyed that. I got to sit there the whole time and I actually got to watch people. I videoed some people. I was showing them their videos so they could see what they were doing during that time. So immediately I was like, dude, we got to get you on the show. Like we have to talk. So here we are.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I thought it was a great time down there, honestly. It was because Mark Smith taught the other dry fire section. And I think the way that we did it, just kind of splitting the group up and we both had a group for an hour and then we switched and we got two, we just switched groups. I thought that was great. It gave everybody a lot of opportunity to kind of go through and hear what he has to say and hear what I have to say. Same information, but maybe, just a little flavor, as I like to say, different flavors.
Yeah. So we should actually talk about that because this is just kind of part of the I think speaks to the summit in and of itself in that the instructor level of instruction there and the types of people that were there. And so basically the students had an option to either be with you for basically about an hour and 45 minutes or 2 hours, or they could be with Mark. And you guys got together and were like, hey, because people were like, I don't know which section to take. They're all having FOMO about what they might miss from the other guy. You're like, well, how about we do this? You guys got your heads together and like, I'm going to talk about these things in this way. And Mark's like, I'll talk about these things in this way. And so we'll actually split it up so nobody misses anything because it was happening during the same hour. And so people got an hour, which actually I think is a really great way to instruct, particularly in those kind of formats because everybody's getting so much information. But so I've hung out with Mark quite a bit and spent a lot of time with him. So I spent the majority of my time with you in that, for that time. I actually had spent the first hour with you, then I went over to listen to Mark a little bit, then I came back because I wanted to hear if you were going to be kind of covering different things in a different way. My point being, it was really great to see again and hear, two guys that spend a ton of time doing this stuff in terms of providing instruction or mentorship to shooters or other instructors or what it happens to be. So impassioned with it. There's a ton of energy coming out of you guys. And it was very, I don't want to say it was parallel in the sense that you guys were teaching the same things. You were foundationally and fundamentally you were. But how people were receiving that information, and I was watching it happen, was really interesting. And I think, again, speaks to the level of quality that you can get when you go to something like this. So that event's pretty unique in that sense, and it was awesome for me to see.
Yeah. Thanks, man. It was a lot of fun, like I said. And I knew Mark and I were going to be, because we had talked the day before and we went to dinner the night before and kind of, work through or talk through some different ideas. I had, my idea of using RPE to train and, and he was talking about, I'm going to talk about grip. And and some other stuff. And I'm like, dude, this is going to work out perfect. So how about we do it this way? And we bounced, ideas back and forth. It just worked. I thought it was great. Everybody got a lot of information in literally
likewise.
that 2-hour time frame.
Yeah, and there was tons of reps. Everybody got tons of reps. The way you guys were able to set it up. So without droning on about that, from my perspective, get to Combatives Summit because it's more than just rolling around on the mats. There was some really good
100%.
practical information on the shooting side. And
absolutely,
last year I'd seen your good buddy Matt Pranka actually present on similar information, and there was plenty of time for open questions, and then people could come up afterwards and discuss with you guys, and then through the following days, which was cool too. And again, it's an intimate environment, so you get if you're not getting what you want out of that, that's on you, man, because these guys are 100%. Here, and they're ready,
100%, for sure.
So we had a couple of on the side conversations about some stuff, which really kind of got my brain spinning. And then you and I connected on the phone about a week ago about this. And there's definitely some roads I want to go down with you because you have a unique experience. And for some people, it may not seem so unique. You come from a law enforcement background, law enforcement background where you've delved into different things. You're also a USPSA shooter. I know that's in the big scheme of things, it's actually relatively new. And what would we say 5-7 years ago, something like that?
Yeah, I would say, 6 years, probably 6 years ago.
So right in the middle there.
Yeah.
So there's some discovery that's happened. And I want to talk about that and also the business that you run and with instruction and those kind of things. And then we're going to go down a few roads. But let's start with you, just kind of giving a little background for people that may not know who you are. Who is Dustin Mowery? What are you about, man? Where do you come from? What can you tell us?
Okay. Yeah, I'm located in Ohio. I've been in law enforcement, or was in law enforcement for 27 years. I started out in a smaller department in Southeast Ohio. I was there right around 10 years, 10 and a half. And the most of the time that I was there, I worked narcotics. I was assigned to a 2-county narcotics unit. So I worked a lot of plainclothes operations. We did a lot of our own search warrants, vehicle takedown, stuff like that. I was not what I consider a true undercover. I wasn't out buying drugs because I just don't walk, talk, or look like somebody that can do that, right? Drug dealer, right? So I didn't do a lot of that, but I was there, in obviously different capacities, and I handled some other types of cases later on when OxyContin really hit here in the Midwest. That's where I kind of pushed to handling a lot of those cases. Then I left, went to a different department. Medium-sized department. We had about 70 guys in that agency, and worked night shift. Most of the time I was there, patrol guy, pretty much the whole time I was there. But when I was there, it was an interesting time because I was able to be one of the guys to help set up our ordnance team or firearms unit. Okay. And then I later helped set up our defensive tactics units or training cadre for those guys. Also did all of the active shooter training with the department through our firearms unit, which was really good to be a part of that. And then I was also became the team leader of our SWAT team because I was on my old department. I was on SWAT from when I got on that department, and then was on when I went to the new department, was put on the SWAT team there. So I worked my whole career at 27 years. I was a SWAT guy as well, firearms guy, DT, all that. So go back to the initial department. So you said small to medium to give people sort of some. Yeah, it was about 20 guys. Reference. Sorry, how many? Yeah, we had about 20 guys. So
okay.
Which is about the average police department size in the U.S. So I was on a department with 20 guys, and we were fairly busy. We weren't going from call to call to call, but we were still pretty busy. Fist fights and DVs and the usual stuff. And then, like I said, I got to go to narcotics. For a small department like that was kind of a bigger deal because, with a small department, every guy is needed. So when I was initially pulled off the road, it kind of set the department back a little bit because we were trying to hire and get guys, So, but it was a great experience for me. It was probably some of the most fun that I had. And I was fortunate with a lot of the guys that I worked with, they're still working in some of those capacities, but our boss was really good. The guys that I worked with, so they kind of it raised us all up on the job, if you will, fairly quickly. So,
now compare that to the quote unquote medium-sized department in terms of numbers and scope.
Yeah, so the medium-sized department, we had about 70 guys.
Okay.
Located in a larger metropolitan area, and we were a lot busier when I went there. I didn't realize we were going to be as busy as we were. And then we really we got it. And I was on nights again for a long time that I was there. I was very busy on night shift, getting into a lot of different things. And then we had a training program, but we really didn't,
Okay.
when I first started. So, and I had been a firearms instructor since 98, and a defensive tactics instructor since 98 as well from my first agency. I was blessed, I guess, if you will, that they sent me to those trainings. And then when I went to the second department, we really started looking at training as a whole, because we started to see issues with guys on the road, and not that guys were really getting written up or in major trouble, but we were seeing things happen, and the bosses were kind of scratching their head like, well, why is this happening?
Mm-hmm.
And the chief at the time really wanted to dive in and start to figure those things out. And we started to put these units together. One of the other guys that was on our firearms unit, he was also our CALIA guy. So it's like an accreditation type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And under CALIA, you're supposed to have, these teams or groups of people that are going to do instruction. And we were just like, well, hey, let's just attack this. And we started with firearms of the ordnance unit. We took over, obviously pistol, revolver for some guys that were still carrying those off duty or whatever, and then shotgun and patrol rifles, ARs.
Okay,
so yeah, it was good.
So to bring it back for just a second, so you have 27.
Yes,
you 27 years. You're currently retired, right? Yes.
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay,
I retired a year ago this past October.
Well, congratulations. We're 1 year anniversary here. We'll talk about how that's going here in a minute. But
yeah, for sure.
So you go from this smaller department, and you said we were pretty busy, and that doesn't mean 20 people are working all the time. They're always on shift. No. So obviously you're overlapping. And so you're kind of you get exposed to the entire, city or whatever the area that you're going through, and you get all these different experiences, right? Then you move to a 70 sworn officer department or whatever, and so now you've more than tripled in size, and you're busier. So in terms of touches and the things that you're seeing, before we get into standing up these different units, can you talk about the intensity and frequency of things, and how that may or may not have changed, and what did that look and feel like compared to the previous department?
Yeah, so the previous department, when I first started there, we didn't have detectives. So you were a patrol guy, and you were handling all of your own cases.
Okay.
So I was very fortunate when I started there, because I started there as reserve when I was in college, actually, which was kind of funny. Being a college guy, and then coming in, instead of going out and partying on the weekends on a constant basis, I was going into the police department to ride around with the second shift guys that kind of took me under their wing.
Okay.
And showed me how to do this job, how to be a police officer. And so when I put in for the full-time position in late 96, first part of 97, they were just like, oh, well, we know Dustin, we know what his work product's going to be. So it was interesting, so you had to do, from A to Z. We couldn't call detectives in.
Okay.
We did, so anytime there was a burglary, or if there was some type of sexual assault, or, domestic violence or whatever, you handled all of that from A to Z. So we got a really good foundation there at that agency, which carried over when I went to the new department, obviously a bigger agency, but we did have detectives, and they would come in and, and work the cases. But because I had a foundation of being able to do interviews and interrogations, not only from being a patrol guy and working my own cases, to then also when I went to narcotics, I was able to build that foundation even more. So when I would, give the detectives information, even just talking to them, I'm like, we've asked them all these questions. Here's what they're saying, So it was good. It was interesting.
So the reason I asked that is kind of to set up a couple other questions I have for you. But, from the outside looking in, from my perspective now, it seems like there's a special unit for everything, right?
Yeah, right.
There's a unit to do this, there's a unit to do that. And I'm not saying those are extraneous or those are unneeded, because obviously the more things you have to deal with, the more specialization you might need, or people that are focused on those particular things. But your experience, though, going from, being a patrol officer that has to do all of these things, now moving in, understanding the job, right? But also understanding the sequence of events that happens. Like, okay, I showed up to this thing, right? I dealt with this thing. I'm going to have to investigate this thing. I'm going to have to see this thing all the way to the end. So you learn what questions to ask, what to do, what not to do. Like, you can see the end, right? Like, I know where this needs to go, so I need to handle myself, this way in order to get there, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and then as you move in, obviously that's very valuable as you move over to the new department, and you may be doing a little less of the detective work, but you understand what the detective is going to need to do. So you're trying to set everybody up for success here.
Yeah.
And I would imagine if you're entering into law enforcement now, particularly as a young officer, and you're moving in maybe into a little larger metropolitan area, and to go back, you said, average department's like 25 officers. I think that's like
20, 25 guys.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and then you move up people. I think every time I have this conversation with people outside of the industry, they're a little surprised by that, because they're generally, I live in a major city. I think there's 1,600 sworn officers, right?
Wow.
And then we're surrounded by multiple agencies that have various numbers as well. So imagine if you're going into an agency much like where I am in California, like you don't get those opportunities. So you don't get to see until you get years and years maybe down the line, when you've had all these different reps where you've had to see the thing happen, but you're actually watching it from the outside looking in. And then maybe you get pulled into one of these units, and now you're finally learning it for the first time. Right. And I go back to all the specialized units, because that to me seems, again, from the outside looking in, like some of the sexy stuff. But the real work is really getting done, by patrol right up front. 100%. Now, you mentioned things like active shooter, and we can get into that. Obviously, narcotics, gang stuff. There's a multitude of things, and there's a special unit for everything for that here, right?
Absolutely.
Where I am. So you're getting all of this stuff right underneath you, all this experience underneath you, all this knowledge underneath you. You're working with all these different types of people at all these different levels. So as you move up, now you're asked to stand up some of these different units. So my question is like the defensive tactics and the firearms, that kind of starts at the larger agency.
Yeah,
I would have to assume some of that already existed, but I wonder what that looked like previous to you getting there and you stepping into this role.
Yes. So before I got there, well, and even after I got there, they had firearms instructors, but unfortunately, like most departments, it turns into, they're really requalification officers.
Right.
Nothing against them. They did a fantastic job with what they had at the time. But myself, and there were 5 of us originally that started the firearms unit, who were all great guys. Loved working with them. We had such a great time when we were standing the unit up and putting everything together. But the guys that were just doing their requals, that's what they knew. And that's what most agencies do. Like the first department I was with, we really only did requalifications. We didn't get into true firearms training, because the bosses, the chiefs are always like, well, that's a lot of ammo. Like it's getting, I'm like, well, yeah, but it's better now than we get into something and the guys don't respond well. So that's kind of how we looked at it at the second agency, is we were, we started talking to the bosses a lot about what's happening in the U.S. and what's happening with our officers and why they're not responding a certain way, which is the way that they wanted them to. And then they were like, okay, well, let's do this. And then
so they were receptive. They were receptive.
Very receptive.
Okay.
Yes,
very
receptive.
Okay.
Yes, very receptive. And we had, multiple meetings, walking down the hallway, they're like, hey, come in here. We want to talk to you about this type of stuff. And how do we do this? And we really just started off with, let's give everybody, some firearms training outside of qualifications, because they had shortened the requalification here in Ohio to 25 rounds, specifically so each agency could then go and give each individual officer training.
Okay.
Some agencies do that.
Some don't.
A lot of agencies don't. Right.
Yep.
And we really went after that, because when Ohio was changing the requalification, it used to be 60 rounds. And then when they went to the 25 round course,
cut it in a third. And this is an ammo problem, or is we have too many people failing this problem? We need to make this, need to lower the standard, or both?
Nope. It was actually the 2 guys that put this together. Their idea was, which I'm 100% on board with this. Their whole idea was, let's make the qualification shorter so then you can use the rest of the time to train officers.
Got it.
The problem was
there wasn't training going on. Yeah.
They weren't trained. They were like, oh, great, we can recall you on duty. You're done in 10 minutes. Okay, now go back out on the road and handle all those runs.
Namaste, have a good day.
Yeah, exactly, 100%.
Tick the box.
And that's what happened. Yes. And it was a check the box. Just, again, requalifications are not for the officer. They're for the department so they can check a box and say, hey, look what we did. Awesome, we got everybody qualified this year.
It's an administrative task.
Absolutely. It absolutely is. Mandated by the state. So,
so they can allocate, however many hours to that, which obviously you just said can be as 10 to 15 minutes. You get them all on the line. They do the thing. They either pass, fail. All right, they didn't pass. You give them another shot. Maybe that takes another 5 minutes or whatever. Okay, they're good.
Yes.
And gone. So what types of things are you guys doing then? Like when you talk about, we're going to give them actual firearms training. And so the reason I'm asking that is I think that's a broad statement, right?
Yes, so, it is. It's massive. Yes.
So let's talk about it. Like what were the things? I mean, without getting, I don't think we need to get too deep into the detail, but what were like the things that you were like, hey, we have these guys, this is what they need now, right? This is where we'd like to see it go, but this is what we have now. Where do you start with this? Because I think that's what probably a lot of officers maybe in the same or similar positions that you're referring to need to know and want to know. At least that's the feedback that I get. Like, man, that was so helpful listening to that guy because we've been trying this and he said this one thing and it made all the difference. So, shoot.
Right. I think the biggest thing, honestly, was we had an administration that was backing us.
Okay.
And literally was like, okay, sit down, let's have a meeting. We talked to them about it and then we wrote it up, like how we kind of wanted to go about it with showing them the issues we were seeing. The main thing that we were seeing was the grip on pistols they were all over the place.
Okay.
So it was like, okay, let's make some, I hate to say standard, but let's get everybody on the same page with how we're going to grip the pistol.
Yep.
I mean, we had people that were teacupping the pistol. I mean, literally their hands were like this on the bottom and they were just gripping the gun. It was really wild to see. So we started out with the basics and building the fundamentals from there.
Okay.
And in doing that, the other thing that we introduced was when we started doing a lot of the training, we started using a timer, just getting the pack timers out there just so they would get used to the beep, which initially kind of made some of the older guys that were on the department then fearful because they were like, well, we've never... We've not done that in training. And I'm like, okay, why? Well, it freaks people out. I understand. But gunfights freak people out as well. I mean, that's kind of scary. You know what I mean? Rounds are going both directions. So
I haven't been there, but I can imagine.
Right. Yeah. I'm like, let's get them used to the timer. So we did. But we worked on the basics constantly. And the one thing we eventually figured out was every time that you're going to introduce something new, tactic, a technique, procedure, a TTP, or whatever you want to call that, but even just going over the grip, if they're only getting on the range one time a year for a 7-hour training period for, let's say, because it's 8 hours, but it's really 7 because you're giving them an hour for lunch to get there and back or whatever and kind of decompress. So they get 7 hours on the range. What we found was every time we introduced something new to them, it would take 3 to 5 years for that thing to connect with them. And here's what I mean by that. That and I'll use grip as an example. Okay, it took them 3 to 5 years for them to come back and say to me, okay, I know I gripped the gun like this, which is not what you have been showing us. And it made my gun it didn't behave correctly. It behaved in a really weird manner. So we started seeing that and listening to what the officers were telling us. And throughout the training of like, okay, what did that, why was this happening? Initially, that first 1 or 2 years, they would look at you with a blank stare and go, I have no idea.
I'm not getting it. Yes. Right.
Yeah. Because again, they may not have dry fired, done anything with this gun from a year ago.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, they got it out of their holster, they pointed it at people, but they didn't really understand what was going on.
I'm doing math here. So you said like it's 7 hours, right? Because you got the 1 hour lunch
Yes,
break. And if it takes 3 to 5 years, what we're really talking about is it takes about 21 to 35 hours, right? 3 to 5 years. So 3 times 7, 21, right? So it takes about 21 to 35 hours for them to kind of get it. The problem is we're extrapolating that 21 to 35 hours over 3 to 5 years, right? And that's 3 to 5 years of these guys going out on the street, these officers going out on the street and hoping, right, that you're having to hope, and they're having to hope that what you taught them in that first 7 is sticking, and they're maybe they get something out of that in case the worst case scenario happens. When you really break that down, 21 to 35 hours isn't even a full work week. I mean, it kind of is here in California. I think 32 hours is the work week or whatever, but we're a little softer here on stuff. But my point being is it's not even a full work week. It's not even a 5-day, 8-hour training day type of thing. It's what they got in the academy, and then it takes them 3 to 5 years to start to connect dots. Obviously problematic. I imagine that's a little frustrating for you as an instructor.
Well, it was, and then what we did is, again, we were, as the firearms team specifically, we were constantly pushing and trying to find new ideas or ways for them to get their hand on the gun and just present the gun. So 2020, obviously, COVID hit, the world shut down, and things went sideways. You had this summer of love and everything else that was going on. But I myself really got into dry fire. That's when I got into USPSA, and I started seeing benefits fairly quickly. So I went online, at the department, and I printed off a bunch of targets. I got some targets from some the smaller, dry fire targets that you can get off of a bunch of different sites. And I put them in our SWAT team locker room.
Got it.
And I went to the bosses and said, hey, we have spare guns for, if one goes down, officer, an OIS, new hires, whatever. I said, can we take one of the guns, maybe not a new one, but an older one that a retired guy had? Can we put some dummy rounds in the magazine, set the gun up for dry fire essentially, and then just let everybody in the department, from the chief down to the lowest officer, come in on duty, like you're getting paid to do this, on duty, go in and dry fire. And then what I did is I would put out information like once a week. I'd send it to a couple of lieutenants. One of the lieutenants liked to put it on. We had a really big flat screen TV in the roll call room. So that lieutenant, she would put it up on that, as kind of a revolving thing on that flat screen TV. And so guys could be like, oh, Mowery put up a dry fire program, and they could look at it if they wanted to. And then, not every day, but, maybe once every other week, I would say something, depending on the shift I was on, and be like, hey, is anybody dry fired? Like, hey, if you guys want to go dry fire, I'm going to take like 10 minutes. Hey, boss, do we have like 10 minutes? Do we have any run? I haven't heard any runs pending. Can we zip in real quick, and can we do some dry fire with whoever wants to? And they were very open to that. Okay,
so they were receptive to this. I was going to ask about like the adoption of this, like who's into this, who isn't. I mean, there's always going to be stratifications of those who just don't care, right? And then there's a percentage that are the high performers. Maybe it's your top 10% if you want to call it that. And then there's like 60% of people that are like, maybe I'll give this a try, but I'm not really sure what this is about. I've never really done this before. I don't want to go in and look stupid. So, so people are being receptive to it, right? And when you say that, when you got one gun, right? So one gun in there. How's this work out? Are people standing in line, or is it like?
So initially what I did is I would just be like, I'd look at one of the guys, Smith, Johnson, whatever, who it was, and just be like, hey man, come with me. We're going to go dry fire for a few minutes. And I would just take them in, and I left the door open so that we could, other patrol guys could come in. And sometimes guys would come in and just watch, and they just wanted to watch what we were doing. But the other thing that we did when we were on the range, especially when we went to this practical shooting or performance shooting idea back in 2020, when we were on the range live fire, we would specifically talk about dry fire. And we would, almost all the drills that we did, we could show them in dry fire. And I would say, hey, by the way, fun fact, you're getting paid now at the range to do live fire. You can also get paid and do this in dry fire. The same exact thing. Here's the array. This is what it looks like. This is the wall that it's on. And I mean, I had targets all over these walls. Like it was pretty wild for a while. But so that's the way that we did it. And now, initially, when I first introduced this idea of practical shooting or performance shooting, the way I did it is I asked for us to go on the range as an ordnance team or the firearms unit for a day. I said, hey, I went to this training and I was shooting with Matt. I went down to North Carolina and took a class in December of 2019 with Matt Pranka and Ben Stoger.
Okay.
And kind of wanted to see, like, hey, what this is about. Because I had met Matt at the Ohio Tactical Officers Association conference in the June previous to that. So I went down there. I wanted to see what this was about, and took a ton of notes, wrote a lot of things down, a lot of the drills, and then took it back. And then literally a week before COVID kind of hit and shut Ohio down, we were on the range because it was lucky in Ohio. We lucked out. It was like this 3 days of where it was going to be nice.
Okay. Weather-wise.
Yeah, weather-wise, because, it kind of, you never know here in March. But we went to the range and I'm like, okay. And I introduced them to everything not everything, but a lot of the basics that I had done with Matt and Ben. And they were like, I like this. This makes more sense and is more practical, right? Okay. Fun fact. It's called practical shooting is what I tell people all the time. Because everybody says, this is more practical. I'm like, yeah, it's in the name. Practical shooting. And but they were on board as well. And they had a lot of great questions. The ordnance team guys had a lot of great questions. And I was like, I don't know, let's go shoot this and see what happens. Because the big thing was, again, this is 2019 timeframe. Here in Ohio specifically, a lot of guys, and that's what I'll talk about, is a lot of guys were still, raising their shoulders up, pushing the arms out, locking the arms out really hard. That lot of shooting style. Kind of an old school
very approach. Much so. What they knew, right?
Yeah, that's what we knew. And I taught that as well. So once I introduced them to like relaxing the shoulders, slight bend in the elbows, using the hands, specifically the support hand to really grip the gun and start to do what you needed to do with it. Guys were like, okay, let's try this. So we started that. Again, it took a little bit more time because of COVID, and we had to delay our training in the summer because, again, Summer of Love was going on.
Yep.
But by the fall of 19, we were able to get out back on the range because we were outside. It was an outdoor range, and we were able to get out fewer people, but more classes, and start introducing this to people.
Got it.
So,
yeah, and the results end up showing for themselves, right?
Absolutely.
Once they start to get it, right? The paper says what the paper should say if you're getting these concepts and you're practicing these things. So, you're talking about dry fire here, and for me, I think for me in the adoption process of dry fire, it wasn't that I had a problem doing that, but when I started doing it, it was like I need to practice my draw, right? I need to practice seeing the dot.
Everybody says,
right. That's what it was for me when I first started, and until I learned, and my brain just works in like, but you have to build into this. So what I just heard you explain, basically going all the way back to fundamentals, people teacupping, just all kinds of different things. Again, my brain works. I'm in the coaching business myself, but I do it on the fitness side. And it doesn't matter who I'm working with. We still have to start from that point. Like I have to see what your bench press looks like. I need to see what your squat looks like, right? And you're going to see a lot of different versions of that. And that's based on the individual, how they were taught, maybe what sports they played, whatever else. There's so many factors that come into that. And you have to have sort of a solid assessment. But bottom line is those things have to be there in order to build on top of. And when the things start to get fancy, or when you ask them to do things like dry fire, they didn't understand what they're supposed to be doing first, and then secondly, how to do it. Right. So there's a play into this, or a progression into this. And so until I learned that, like it was really, I don't want to say it was useless because my draw got better and I could find the dot easier, but I didn't know how to layer on the other pieces. It didn't make sense to me until I kind of made the connection with, what I do here. And I'm like, well, hold on. There's something specific I need to be working here, right? And when you do whatever that is, whatever I'm choosing to work today, this is what I'm going to work on. and there could be multiple things, but generally I break it down to like 2 things. I'm going to do, if I've got 15 minutes, I'm going to work this for 5 and this other thing for 10, whatever it happens to be. But if I'm not getting what I'm supposed to in the 5, I might extend that a little bit. I might decrease, you mentioned RPE, rate of perceived exertion, or how hard I'm working to try and really refine the skill and move on. And this is what I was getting from your dry fire talk a couple weeks back, or 10 days ago now, or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And my point in this is going back to the length of time people have to train, right? And like in a department sanctioned training session, 7 hours a year or whatever it is, and how much work can get done outside of that. And you're saying you can do this on duty, dude. Like this, just come in and you can work on this stuff on duty. You would also mention we can explain and we can show them what we're doing on the range through when we are live firing. We also show it in dry fire. Now, I have watched a few instructors do this probably in the last 2 years, more than I had seen in any of my other time out on the range. It was always like, hey, we're here to shoot today, so we're going to shoot. Right. But there's a lot going on there, and the basic foundations maybe not have been built there. And what I watched is even with really skilled shooters, people that were, that do take time, that do train, that do practice, breaking that down for them now gives them something to take away from the range today to then go back home or on duty if it's paid for or whatever, like you were explaining, to train. And if you don't, I guess what I'm saying is this: I think there's a lot of value in showing dry fire on the range, right? And then moving into the live fire and then breaking it back down to maybe some dry fire and then moving it into some live fire on the building blocks of those skills. And to me, what I hear you saying is actually pretty novel in 2019, 2020. I could be very wrong about this because I've learned way more, in the last several years than I knew before. But I would say that's a pretty novel concept. And you're saying you got it from Stoger and Pranka, right? Who had been saying this for a very long time, and that nobody was really listening. And it takes guys like you to kind of take that stuff back to the department and start implementing it. So I think where we're going with this is, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say, I think one of the things too is that we kind of discovered as the firearms team is what we saw was if we're giving them a ton of information, which you are on the range, and everything is live fire constantly, right? Let's say we'll show them 3 things. Let's say it's grip, strong hand grip, support hand grip, and then we'll talk about the sight because I don't care about the trigger jerk and all that stuff. That's it's irrelevant to me. But let's talk about grip specifically, strong hand grip, support hand grip, and then the sights, irons or dot, right? What we found was that if the only thing we were doing with them is in the explanation, and then we were live firing every time, and then we were moving on, but we were not coming back to dry fire, they were missing a massive, massive piece. Like, you would explain, let's say 6 things, but they would get 1 and they would get 6. They did not get 2, 3, 4, 5, or it would be like a little bump, and you're like, okay, hold on a second. So then when we went back from live fire back to dry fire on the same exact stuff, we let them do it on their own time. I'm like, take the next 5 minutes to work on that you didn't understand. And they were like, okay. Guns were unloaded. We had rubber bands or tape, because we shot Glocks. We just take them out of battery a little bit so the trigger could reset.
So resetting, yep.
Yes, resetting. And I'm like, okay, take the time to work on what you were having problems with in live fire. So they would do that. And there were 6 of us out there, 5 or 6 of us on the range. I'm like, ask any one of these instructors, they will be able to help you through this. Because I was thinking about the next evolution of like, okay, once we get this done, we're going to go to this. But all of our guys were on the same page. And we were giving them the same answers, maybe saying them in a little bit different way, but we were all on the same page, which really, really helped. And what we started to see was the success rate.
They're connecting
was much higher.
Yeah, they're connecting number 2 now. Like, now I get number 2. I thought I had that, or maybe I didn't know if I had it or not, but now I know, right? Yes. And now I know what to correct. So when you go back, obviously, into live fire, there can now recheck points 1 and 2 because of point 6 isn't, it's not doing what you're expecting it to do. Well, you got to go back to checkpoint 1 and checkpoint 2, right? Yeah, that's so. again, that's something that made a lot of sense to me too, because I was going out, my experience was I was going out and I was getting these long range sessions, like long sessions, or 6 to 8 hours out on the range. And I think it's a challenge for an instructor because they want to deliver all this information, right? Because they know you need it, right? And they want you to get it, but there's also like a pressure to move at the pace of whatever the class is moving, or, we're not coaching to the lowest common denominator, but what really is that, right? If they don't understand the fundamentals, do you even know what that is? That kind of thing. And then, you're making sure people are getting out of it what they want to get out of it. And again, so these are long range sessions. So you're getting 6-8 hours or whatever it is at a time. And it took me doing that several times to connect all those dots that what you're saying. And if you don't have and I was fortunate, I had the ability to go out and live fire all this stuff. And I didn't completely understand the dry fire concept. I mean, I understood it was important for me in some way, but I didn't understand how to apply it. I certainly didn't know how to take that 6 or 8 hours of information that I got back to my dry fire and then practice the things that I did or didn't know I was getting right in the live fire session. And so there's this balance. That's what I hear you talking about. Is this balance of, hey, we need to make sure it's kind of you may explain it like this. It's like the fitness to fatigue model. Like my body can only hold. Let's just say my systems can only handle so much in a workout, in a session, in a week, right, in a training block. And at some point I have to deload, right? I have to come back a little bit, so that the idea being here is that I give my body, or I give this person who's on the range, enough stimulus, right, to where they can actually gain something from the stimulus that they're getting. But that means I have to rest. I can't keep doing this and expect that I'm going to get a good solid return on my investment. So I have to move it forward, and then I have to peel it back. Then hopefully, if that peeling it back, some things set in. Part of the peeling it back is the dry fire, so that I can move to the next progression or the next workout or the next training block or whatever, and I can reap the rewards and express the rewards of what I gained by that. I train a little bit beyond my ability, I step it back, right? I train inside that ability, and then a little bit beyond my ability, and then I step it back, and I keep doing that process. But that is not how the majority of firearms training works, man. It just isn't.
No, you're right. And I've been to some other classes where guys are doing exactly what you're talking about. It's just like, okay, hey man, we're going to shoot live the whole time. And I'm like, and you can, I'm sure you've been to classes and or have experienced this to where you're like glazing over. You're just like, I'm no longer taking in information. And again, I like that term of deloading, and that's what we were doing. We would give them multiple times to deload the brain and just relax. And I say in my classes often, I'm like, hey man, guys, I'm sorry, we're going to give you a ton of information. We're going to take 2 breaks today, lunch and when we're done. Right? Yeah. Because there's a ton. However, the way that, and I learned this again, like teaching a ton for our department, was the deloading or the breaks were obviously when they were jamming mags, but also when we were dry firing, and I just kind of let them do that on their own. I'm like, take 5 minutes, take 7 minutes, take 10, and just work on this. And then I just kind of stand back on the range and let them work through it, and openly tell them, if you have a question, please call me over. I'll help you out. And look, I'm still working on this as well.
Yep.
You may have been staying there when I said this. It took me 3 months of dry fire to get my shoulders to relax, and for my elbows to relax. I mean, it was 3 months of constant dry fire. To the point my wife was like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah,
like,
you're being obsessive about it. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And I had to, because I understood what I was seeing was the better way to train, and that's the direction I wanted to go. So just put that time in.
So there has to be a commitment from the student, but also from the instructor, to be able to do this and be patient with it. At the same time, moving it at a pace that moves things along. But sometimes that can be really frustrating, moving at that slower pace. And I get that from both clients and from coaches, or from shooters and instructors. It's like, hey, I want this to be so much better. Yeah, I do too, but we can only move as fast as this person can get this stuff. Right. Otherwise, in the workout or strength and conditioning, we're just continuing to overload a shitty movement pattern, right? So in this case, like, all we're doing is we're asking this person to go faster, and we're telling them they need to be more accurate, but they're not set up for success here in the first place. So what are we really going to get out of this? And again, if it's like now you're in an apartment that has 1,500 people, and I've got to get this person through the block because the next group has to come in next week or the next day or whatever because they haven't been in a year and they have to get it retrained or they have to be trained. This is a huge undertaking, and I think that's a lot of the frustration that I hear people talking about. And so I want to kind of to take a right turn here and get into the competitive shooting side because and you're the practical shooting that you're instructing comes from the competitive world, right? Competition shooting. I mean, 100%. I think if you go back to its roots, it comes back to actual engagements, right? And at some point this gets developed into a sport, right? And now we have practical shooting, USPSA. And so you get introduced to this kind of like, I don't know if it's late in your career, but it's a ways down the road, is it not?
Yes and no. So I knew about it when I was a kid, when it was still IPSC, before it was USPSA. My dad is a retired law enforcement officer, so my dad has been a competitive shooter.
Oh, okay.
I used to be a brass rat when I mean,
I
8
didn't know
years
this.
old.
Okay, all right.
Oh, yeah. So I used to go to, this is a long time ago, early to mid 80s, when Second Chance was still around, Second Chance Body Armor.
I don't even know that one,
Yeah, so Richard Davis was the guy who actually started making bulletproof vest out of Kevlar. He's the guy, you may have seen videos, you can YouTube his name, Richard Davis shooting himself. He would go to departments and wear his bulletproof vest and shoot himself with a 38 357 revolver and then turn the pistol and shoot bowling pins. It was pretty wild.
Okay.
But he used to have a really big shooting competition in northwestern Michigan that my dad used to go to, and they shot competition up there for years and years, and I was a brass rat for him. We used to go to Marietta, Ohio, and my dad would shoot matches there. So I knew about IPSC. And then after I got in law enforcement, it wasn't really talked about. It was just, wow, that's gamer stuff. You know what I mean? It's not really practical. And then fast forward, yes, I was much later in my career, 2019, and I only had a few years left, when I was introduced to this idea of competitive shooting again. And I saw the benefits because I was really looking at and trying to find myself a better way, because I was looking at the numbers, right, of what the stats say from the FBI. Again, depending on where you are in the U.S., those numbers are pretty low for hit percentage. And I'm like, man, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way. And then after Matt and I met, we were talking a lot through the summer of 19 in the early fall. And he's like, you need to come down. Let's come down here and shoot. And I'm going to show you some more. So then that's when I got into it. Started out in production, shooting iron sights, 10-round magazines, so I had 6 or 8 mags on my belt. And again, was a SWAT guy for a very long time, done all kinds of different things. I'm like, this is not going to be a big deal. And my first match, let
me guess, you got smoked and the light bulb.
And I've told this story, several times, that this dude, 65, 70-year-old man walks out with a cane, you know what I mean? Shooting production.
It was ridiculous. With the canes and the oxygen tanks where they can barely walk. They're like a walker and a Marlboro cigarette hanging off their bottom lip or something.
And he walks out, makes ready, and I'm like, oh, this old guy, okay. I'm like, whatever. And he starts, and I was like, I think I just got crushed, So I texted Matt when I was going there, and he's like, okay, buddy, call me when you're done.
Yeah.
So of course I did. And he's like, so how was that mess? And I'm like, I have no words, but I want to do more of this.
Yeah.
All right. So, Matt's always been great about it. We talk often about shooting and training and stuff like that. And he's like, hey, I'm going to introduce you to a lot of other things. He goes, but I will tell you this, welcome to the nightmare.
Yeah.
It's not my fault. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. So yeah. But USPSA, I think, and a lot of times guys will look at it and they'll say, well, that's gamer stuff. And I'm like, okay, tell me, when you say that, what does that mean to you? And they usually come back with the normal answers, right? Like, well, where all the targets are. Okay. You know where, the boundaries are. You can see the targets through the walls. The walls aren't solid. you're going to come in position, you're going to shoot into position, my terms, not theirs, and you're going to be off, you're going to be on 1 foot. And I'm like, okay, all right. So let's talk about
all true statements, right? All true statements.
100%. 100%. However, usually the one that I like to dispel with them the first right off the rip is like knowing where the targets are. And I'm like, well, most of the time in law enforcement, we know where the bad guy's at. Unless it's obviously an ambush, we've seen a bunch of those. If it's a traffic stop, I know the person sitting in that car. I've seen them. You know what I mean? I'm walking down an alley and, they're there and the guns are coming out. I know where they're at. So that kind of dispels that pretty quickly. And I go, hey, I get it. A lot of times we do not have solid walls. You're right. But I still have to shoot around it. I can't shoot through it, And then I do agree with them about not coming in a lot of times with a solid foundation, like guys coming up on 1 foot. And I said, now, yes, that is the gamer side of things. Mm-hmm. But in all reality, if we break this down, what are we ultimately trying to do? We're trying to shoot these targets as fast, as accurate as we possibly can. Mm-hmm. I said, show me any law enforcement gunfight, shooting, however you want to put that, where you don't want those two things.
Yeah, there's
right.
No debate about that.
Right. And then everybody's like, okay, that makes sense. And I'm like, okay, so let's look at the things that we can use from practical shooting and use in our world. It's just like jujitsu. You can't
Correct.
use everything from jujitsu, in the law enforcement world. It doesn't, you know what I mean? Like most guys in law enforcement wearing their Batman belt, as I say, their gun belt, and they're wearing body armor, which reduces your breathing by 20%, laying on your back, you're probably not going to put a triangle choke on a guy. Mm. Most guys, You know what I mean? However, understanding how your body moves and how to move someone and control them, you can take those aspects or principles from BJJ and use on the street. Mm-hmm. So once I kind of explain it like that to people, they're like, all right, we're on board with that,
I think it's so interesting that there's these absolutisms that exist, yes. Right?
Yes.
And it was a challenge for me too, because I think for a little while, I kind of bought into the gamer thing for a short period of time, because I was like, what are we really doing here? And because I was looking at it as two different things. Like there's the competition side, and then there's going to be this engagement side of things or whatever, and what's the quote unquote reality of what's happening there. But just, you have to deconstruct it. And you just did a really good job of that. Like there's two things that are going to be really important for you. No matter where you are in whatever situation, it's going to be speed and accuracy, right? Mm-hmm. And what does it take to have those two things, right? And there's a lot of things that it takes for those two things. And then you put in the situation, the environmentals, all the kinds of things that can happen. Like, where am I? Am I around a vehicle? Am I in a house? Am I, in a park, in a field, in a parking lot, something like that? All that stuff comes up. And I think it's tough for people. And for me, it was just maybe being more naive and ignorant to what all of that stuff was until I had seen it, watched it, had several discussions. And it wasn't that I wasn't open to it. I just didn't fully understand it. So but I do think this is an openness situation, right? And it's like, what are they not open to? Are they not open to the fact that this could help them? Or are they just not open to being shown that they're not as good as they maybe think they are at being fast and accurate, under stress, having to move around, those kind of things? Or is it just, man, I don't even know what the other thing is, because I have a hard time with it. And I'm not saying that all the answers to being a better shooter are through competition. I don't believe that, right? But no. I do see the value. It's just like, why? Again, this is just me and my small lizard brain. Like, if I've got a client that's coming in here who's not worked out before, right, or very little, right, or maybe they're just revisiting this in their life, and they recognize, like, I need to be better at this. I need to be healthier. And let's just leave it very simple. Like, I need to be healthier. Just like I need to be more fast and accurate when the time arises for me to be fast and accurate. What are the things I need to give them? Well, ideally, like, they need a lot of things, right? They need some strength, right? They need a little endurance. They need some capacity or some endurance to be able to just do the things and get all the work done. And does that mean I'm just going to do one thing with them? And what would the foundation of all that be? It's just going to be strength training. Like the first thing we got to do is got to put a little muscle on your frame, get you a little stronger so you can handle the other things. No, it means I need to find a way, right, to get all of those things done inside the programming, especially if I'm only seeing them a couple of times a week. In this case, 7 hours a year,
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
I need to be able to
Right.
give them all of this stuff because ultimately it all benefits them in the larger scheme of being healthy. Right. So if I then again run this parallel or tangent, however you want to look at it, to shooting and practical shooting, I look at it as there's a lot of things to be gained here outside of the game, whether you win or lose. Right. And I think that's what it gets broken down to is like, what am I trying to win here? And it's really defining like what winning looks like. Right. And like, how do I define like what I've done here today is productive for me? And I think that's where the disconnects start to happen, and it comes back to at the end, it's just a game, and I didn't win today, and it's not that big a deal to me. I have a problem with that because, like, whether you're getting on the mat or you're getting on the workout floor or you're getting in the into a shooting match, that's very individual, right? And so I have another question that we're building into it, I think, here about winning and what's important and how good do you need to be. But the point of this is like there's still seems to be, it's changing. I think it's changing and in a much better way because I think more people are talking about it and the way you just explained it. I think that's where it comes to. But I'm still wondering, like, what is the disconnect here and why aren't they more open to this idea or these concepts?
So I think it's two things. The first one is going to be, and you already said it, kind of guys get, they're embarrassed or they don't think it's going to happen to them, or they're embarrassed to go and shoot a match, right? Which I get that happens.
So this is a feelings thing. It's a
feelings thing a little bit. Like we would set up stages, on the range with our guys. And I'm like, hey, you got 5 minutes or 4 minutes to walk through this. Let's talk about it. And I would give them pointers like, hey, this is what you need to do, right? But the other part of that first piece of not wanting to go, the other thing that happens is most law enforcement officers, especially the young guys that are athletic or would want to be interested in doing this, they're working nights and weekends. So getting off at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning and then having to drive another, let's say, 30 minutes to a range, whatever it is, like they're already going to be tired. You know what I mean? Because they spent 8 hours on shift dealing with, drunks, whatever. Whatever. Right. And then, so there's that issue. Right. And I think the second part of it is, and this is a really big one because I hear this a lot from guys is, well, what's the scenario? And I'm like, we're shooting guns on a range and we're running. No. But what's the scenario? So they want to, and I think that starts in the police academy with law enforcement officers. Everything is designed and built around a scenario, and I'll give you, for instance, like, okay, when I was in the academy, which was a long time ago, right? When I went through the police academy, but it was okay, you're arriving on scene to a domestic violence or a burglary. So in our mind, starting in the police academy, everything, this is a DV. Where would I approach on a DV? Okay, I would, I'd park a couple houses down, but whatever it was. Oh, this is a burglary. Okay, this is how
there's tactics. There's tactics and strategy here. Yes.
Yeah. We start to put all that in, and that turns into everything that we do. And I'm like, but I'm just trying to get you to shoot better and move more efficiently.
Okay. So this is what is that a bad thing though? In that situation for that type of training, is that bad?
No, but the problem is instead of putting it in boxes of like, okay, we're going to put that over in this box because that's where we're doing this. And law enforcement, we put it in every single thing. So everything has to be a scenario. I'm like, get the scenario out of your head, bro. Okay. And I've even broken it down like this for guys. I'm like, okay, scenario is this. I need you to shoot very accurately and I need you to move really, really fast. That's your scenario. And they're like, oh, okay. And then they kind of let go of that other thought process a little bit. Like, hey, dude, you're not arriving on a DV, a bird, whatever. No, I need you to shoot accurately. I need you to move fast while you're doing it. Okay. And then it kind of loosens them up a little bit. And then again, the way that you build the stages or you build the drills or whatever, to increase their skills, because that's what drills do. They increase skills.
Mm-hmm.
Then you make it fun. And we would always try to make them have like a little competition at the end.
And it ultimately kind of turns into that anyways, right?
Oh,
like everybody
absolutely.
knows. Everybody knows who's the faster, more accurate shooter. Everybody knows who the fast guy is who misses fast. Everybody knows who the super accurate guy is who moves really slow. Like, and even that guy knows that. Like, but what are we measuring here? We're measuring both, right? And so there's a
speed and accuracy.
There's a little bit of competition that always arises there, and that's super healthy, I think.
Yes,
right?
It is. And what we did it, so we would run it twice. So the first time through, everybody would run it on their own.
Okay.
Right? And then I would watch, or some of the other guys would watch after their first run, and then we would pull them to the side and be like, hey, you're going to run this again here in about 10 minutes. The next time you run this, I want you to do this one or two other things a little bit better to make you more efficient. And I guarantee you, if you shoot at the same pace, you're going to beat, such and such over here who's, 31 years old and, was a college athlete, blah, blah, whatever.
Right.
I think you can outshoot this guy because you shot better points than him. But what you were slower. They're like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
You're deconstructing it. You're just deconstructing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they were like, okay. And a couple guys that were, and this happened almost every time we did this, guys that were like towards the middle or maybe down towards the bottom, they would, on the next run, they would shoot up and they would be like top 5. And they're like, whoa, wait a minute. There's something, wait a minute. Hey, what these guys just told me. And it wasn't what we were doing. It was, they were doing it. Mm-hmm. The proof was in the pudding. They were actually doing the work and listening to what we were saying. And they were like, hey, yeah, these guys just told me to do this and this. I did that. And this is why I shot better. So, but again, once we get away from that whole scenario and we were just shooting and having a good time and building that camaraderie and that little bit of competition, we saw them starting to shoot better but also just as important, they were starting to understand more of what we were trying to get them to do.
So you just described a couple of limiting factors, I think, in terms of getting people into, or at least exploring, competition shooting as a means to be faster and more accurate, right? Mm-hmm. It's also obviously, what are the things the components that come along with that? And this is going to ring true against, a lot of things is, well, there's some physical ability that needs to be improved. There's the term efficiency that comes in all the things, right? From the ground to the barrel of that gun, like what is happening across the board. So there has to be a solid understanding of that, and you have to be able to practice those things, right? There has to be an understanding of what you're doing and why, right? So there's all these, and I'm breaking it into kind of these constituent parts the same way you did, and I think people have a tough time kind of wrapping their head around that. So one of the limiting factors was like a lot of the younger guys, that are a little bit more fit, they're a little bit newer to this, they're maybe had a little bit more exposure to what competition shooting kind of is and how it may carry over because of the interwebs, and it's a little bit more popular. You can find it on YouTube, you can see it on their Instagram or whatever else. They just might not have access to it the same kind of way. Now they do, but that means sometimes some major compromises. And here's the thing, like I never judge anybody. Like if you're working, Thursday through Tuesday and you don't see your family, or whatever, like, look, man, like that shit's important because if you don't have balance there, like nothing that you do out here and going all in on that is going to help anybody. Like it might in that very, kind of one-off circumstance or that very seldom circumstance, but you got a lot of things about. So I don't judge people on that. I think that's a very real challenge for people.
Absolutely, 100%.
But the other thing is like the understanding of what it is that you could and should be doing when you do get into, competition shooting and how this can work for you. And there's a lot of benefit there, right? There's the physical piece. Absolutely. There's the actual shooting pieces. There's the camaraderie piece. There's the, challenging your mind and your brain in a different way, giving you something to look forward to. You're not necessarily talking about the job and being on the job all the time or, whatever. It's like, I was talking to John Valentine the other day after the summit. We were debriefing that a little bit, and we were talking about the mindset around training, but around competitive shooting. And I see it as being, there's guys like you who do a really good job of kind of going, hey, this is the benefits that, like, example, like law enforcement could get out of that, but also that a citizen could get out of this in terms of, training for or being prepared for a very bad scenario, right? Whatever that is, without thinking about it like a scenario, right? And then there's another group of people out there that just are all in on competitive shooting, and it's almost kind of like, he described it as like bullet golf, right? Where you're chasing a score all the time. You're trying to move up you're trying to class up constantly. And that is the goal. The goal is the prize. The goal is the bragging rights. The goal is the practice score, and whatever it is that you're doing there. That is definitely one way to look at it. I don't think that's wrong at all for those people that want to do that. But I think that's where things get lost. Is like, that is what competitive shooting is. It's chasing the classing up. It's chasing the score. It's escaping from home, and doing this. The one thing. It's the one thing that I do, right? And if I don't just do this one thing, I'm not going to be good at it, or it's not worth my time. And so it's either all in or all out. And so that brings up the next question, which is what I was getting to before, which is like, we're hearing the benefits, right, from so many people, and it's showing up, and we're seeing the changes happening. What you just mentioned about what you were doing, or what you did, on the firearms range, in terms of setting up more practical sort of stage shooting to get people to practice all of the skills in one place in the short amount of time that they had. Again, building into this, like, I think we're seeing like there are a lot of agencies that are actually doing this. There's folks out there that are doing this across the country, and it's showing up, and it's showing up on body-worn camera footage to some extent.
You can see
it. 100% can see it. It's just taking a long time to get there. Again, 5 to 7 years, or 3 to 5 years for this to kind of come around. So I think, again, with those limitations, but also with the disconnect that exists there, and people doing a good job about it, I wonder this, like, just the getting people, or making it easier for them to understand those things. I don't know what the answer is, but to understand it in the way that you broke it down, and to give people pathways to get into this and not feel like they have to chase the classes, right? They don't. It's not about this. That's not why I want you to go. I want you to go to be able to experience things and test yourself in a way that you wouldn't be able to test yourself another way, unless, again, you get lots of training on the range with your team or with your agency, which, let's be honest, it just doesn't exist. We have a lot of things to do, right? So this is a pathway for you to go out and do those things. If you could think about it that way, forget the class stuff, man.
Who cares?
Forget the prizes, forget the national competitions, forget all the different optic categories and the race guns and all the different things, man. Just go out and do that. What is the answer to that, man? How do we get more people to look at it that way and adopt this more, as an agency, but also I think it starts with the individual and the drive to just want to get it done. I think the other thing that's starting to happen too is like, to get there is having more matches for cops, right? So, seeing a lot of this right now. I'm seeing a lot of this. This last 2 years has been like incredible, actually.
It's awesome. Like, there was one in Tennessee that some guys down there, I didn't get a chance to shoot it. I was doing some other stuff.
Right.
Those guys ran one. I'm going to try to shoot it next year. And like I think they had 125 guys there, all law enforcement, except for a few guys.
It's sold out in like 30 days or like 3 days or something like that. Yeah, super fast.
And then the other thing too is like, me and another guy that I shoot with, Josh, he does a great job. He's a retired trooper. I don't hold that against him too much, but sorry, troopers. But great dude. Josh Eldridge is a great guy. And what we'll do is when we go to local matches, like, we're telling other law enforcement officers or retired guys, like, hey man, come and shoot this match with us. And it goes back to building that culture in the culture of USPSA. So, and we tell guys like, hey, if you're going to get on our squad, just prepare yourself, because you have to have thick skin to be on our squad, because we are going to mess with you. We're going to break balls. We're going to have a good time, and we're going to be cops being cops. You know what I mean? So we get it. That's how we've gotten a few more guys to come out and shoot with us here in Ohio, and the central and western part of the state. Of guys are coming. They're like, man, you guys are having a good time. And And exactly. And I've told guys, they're like, well, you're an A-class guy. I go, that means what? I'm like, who cares, dude? Like, oh, cool. Like, hey, you outshot me on that last stage. Does that mean that I should just
throw your hands up and walk away? Yeah.
Right, and be like, I'm out. And they're like, oh no. And I go, don't worry about it. You're here to shoot and learn to shoot better. And I go, then when you use these ideas from practical shooting on the road and you start running around and moving, you're going to go, man, this is a lot easier. I said, don't you want this situation to be easier? And everybody goes, yeah, okay, that makes sense. And we used to use the same terminology on the range from when we were doing active shooter training as well. So every time we were touching guns, the terminology was the same. And we would relate it to like, oh, we did bar hop, or we did a mounted or dismounted movement. Oh, we're doing the same thing in this structure for active shooter response.
Right.
They're like, oh, wait a minute, hey, Dustin, you talked about that when I was at the range 3 months ago.
Yeah,
yes,
it translates.
Then they get it now because it's part of the scenario, and they're like, okay, yes, I see where you're at now. So
okay, so you said something there that I actually never heard said before. That actually makes a lot of sense, and I wonder how much influence like USPSA can handle this. But it was what you said was, and I think I could be wrong, but it was, we need to build the culture of law enforcement inside USPSA. Like USPSA could be doing a better job at this. You didn't say that, but
no.
I wonder if that's a thing. Like, does it feel like inside USPSA, as a USPSA shooter, A-class shooter, whatever, that it's not, I don't know if this is the right word, but it's not inclusive, or it's not inviting for a new law enforcement person to enter in some way?
I think that goes back to where you are shooting and who you're going to shoot with.
Gotcha.
Does that make sense? Like,
yes, for sure.
I've been to, there's a club I shoot here locally. It's 30 minutes from my house. We shoot it every month. Those guys, or the guy that runs that, is super open. He has a new shooter meeting and all this stuff. But it goes back to the guys that you're going to go with. And we tell guys, and this happened to us last month, we had a brand new shooter. He was an IDPA guy switching to USPSA, was a law enforcement officer. And I'm like, okay, man, listen, ask questions. Like, Josh and I don't even care. Just ask questions. We're going to have these, and his thing is, well, I don't want to take away from your match. I'm like, dude, this is a fun little local. I don't even care about it. Like, let's just go have fun and go shoot guns. To me, it's who are you going with? And there's some guys out in California that, I know a bunch of those dudes out there because we're on a big text thread group together, that those guys are constantly shooting matches and bringing more and more and more guys into it. And that's really what we need to do. I think to ask USPSA to come in and be like, hey, you need to support law enforcement more, I don't think they were ever going to do that. I'm not saying they won't, but I just don't think they will.
Okay.
However, if you take guys that are still on the job or retired guys hosting law enforcement matches like they were doing down there in Tennessee, I think they did one in California, maybe talking about one in Arizona. I can't remember. I get lost in some of those.
I've heard a few conversations going on about them putting together in places like maybe in Nevada. I know there's definitely some stuff happening here in California, Arizona. You can shoot a match any night of the week. Texas for sure. There's guys down there in Texas that are getting together pretty regularly now. In fact, I think they just shot a match together last weekend. That kind of thing. So that's interesting from the logistics perspective and or like geographically, kind of where are you located, and it's going to take people like you, out there to kind of make it more known or more aware and encourage guys to get in. This has kind of gone to a different level too. I see a lot of these instructors, the ones you're speaking about, right? Kind of being a little bit vague here, but some of those instructors are actually putting together classes for law enforcement on like intro to competitive shooting. So it's like, hey, you don't have to go out to your first match and learn it all there, right? Like a lot of people do. And that's it's a steep learning curve, right? Like when you go out there, like, okay, here we go. The beeper goes off or the timer goes off, and I just watched again the dude who walks up with the cane just burn this thing down, and I'm pretty sure I'm not capable of that. So I'm just gonna wing it and see what happens. I'm gonna try to emulate what I saw the other people do, and that takes time, right? To kind of pick up the pieces and go, that worked, that didn't work. That's not how I would run that stage. Like, oh, now I realize my mistakes, but it took me 5 stages to learn that. Now I got to come back out and do that over and over. It takes lots of reps. But what they're doing is they're actually putting courses together for Ellie. They're making them accessible to them. That does a lot of things at one time. Obviously, it introduces somebody in a less like maybe competitive environment. You're getting instruction, not just an experience, right? You're also meeting the other people that are around you in that community that you can lean on, ask questions to, go to matches with, things like that. So I agree with what you said there. I don't think USPSA is going to come to the table and go, hey, we're going to do law enforcement matches only. It doesn't make sense for them to do. They're busy. They got other things going on, right?
Absolutely.
So what this takes is it's going to take people within law enforcement to start their own little club within the club type of deal and get people out there. And so that you're making it accessible, you're making it inviting, but you're also keeping with the culture in a sense that, hey, we're going to do what cops do, right? Like we know you work at this agency. So at some level, you're not just showing up for yourself, you're showing up as a representative of that agency and so forth. And so there's a little bit of a competitive environment there going on. And I've seen this guy on the road. Like we've crossed paths, in the past. I think that's super important. And that's I only hear that from law enforcement when they have. I've been involved in several of courses where it's been like multi-jurisdictional areas have come together and they're training together and they see the guy that they've crossed paths with maybe on another team or on the street or whatever, and there's that immediate connection point, and then there's also an immediate like, what's that guy doing over there? Like, is he better than me? Is he not better than me? That kind of thing. What are they doing? And they're exchanging ideas and they're building confidence and community, so to speak.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't want to drone on about that too much from my perspective, but I just see it. I'm like, you kind of hear it one of two ways. You hear it. This is me from the outside looking in, and so I think I can try and understand if I'm an officer who's like, look, dude, I hear at this. I hear I need to do this because it's so good for me, right? But I also hear at the same time, like if I'm not doing it, I suck. I'm a loser, right? And at the same time, if I go out and I do suck, like I don't want that on me. Like now I'm really gonna look like I actually do suck, and there's some truth in this. And it makes it kind of a tough entry point. I wonder what your experience was. So what I heard you say is like, I went out to a match, I got smoked, I called Matt, and I went, okay, this can't happen again. I have lots of questions, and I'm going all in on this thing, kind of thing. But I don't think that's the attitude of the majority of people out there. And I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's definitely not the norm, I would say. And I think that's where it goes back to the firearms instructor at the individual department to introduce the principles of practical shooting, and then start to get them doing stages at the range, making it fun. First off, explain the rules. Hey, because I'll be very honest with you. When I first started, I was like 180. What are you talking about? The 180 rule? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, dude, I'm going to run with the gun.
Right.
But once you understand the rules a little bit and you kind of see, okay, well, they created the rule, and I explain it like this. I'm like, hey, this 180 rule, I go, that was just like, they came out with an SOP or a general order, right? Because every general order in your agency is related back to the dude, right? Who caught, you're like, oh, this is the Smith rule. Right. We can't do that anymore because of Smitty was being an idiot, right?
Exactly. There's it got put in place for a reason, and it's almost always a 100%. Safety issue, right? It's a safety or liability thing. Yep.
Right. And that's what I tell guys. I'm like, okay, this 180 rule is, I relate it to my department. We had somebody do something. I'm like, hey, that rule that we have? Yeah, we can't do that. Everybody knows why of the person. I'm like, dude, same thing with this. And they're like, oh, that makes sense. So relating it back to the job always. And I think introducing guys to stages, nothing crazy. It doesn't have to be a long stage where you're shooting 35 rounds and they're doing, you start them unloaded, start any of that. No. Just, it's a simple course. It's 15, 20 shots. They've got some targets out here. Okay, let's go run this. And then just let them experience that and giving them that opportunity to be like, okay, all right, I don't feel that I did very well. And I'm like, okay, what was his points and all this other stuff? Okay.
Right.
All right, try this again. Here's what I want you to do. Okay. And then just doing it that way, making it fun instead of, knife handing them and telling them that they suck. Nobody likes that. You know what I mean?
I mean, some people are motivated by that, but I think that's a very few or a small part of the population. I tell the story.
Yes.
You know, I've said this before. Like, I know growing up in sports, if the coach wasn't yelling at me, right, and knife handing me, right, I didn't feel like I was. I didn't feel like I was doing a good job. Like, I expected that, right? That was just kind of how it was for me. I don't know where it came from. It just is, and that motivated me in the all the right kind of ways. Sometimes it made me angry, and then I was able to harness that and put it to work. Right. Sometimes I was embarrassed. Same thing. I harnessed that energy and I pointed it in the same direction. I don't think I understood it that much at that time, but I just know looking back, like, that was a super important thing to me. If I wasn't getting yelled at, like, I must be doing something wrong, right? And I think that maybe that's a generational thing. I don't know if it's the same anymore, or whatnot, as we're talking about the new people coming in. But yes, what you're doing is you're giving them exposures, and they wouldn't get those exposures by just going to a match. If you run the stage, that's your opportunity, right? That's what you got. You don't get an opportunity to run it again, right? And again with instruction in between, to learn what you did wrong. That was my time, that was my hit factor, and here's where I am, and what do I do with this? I move to the next stage, and I hope that I can be better on the next one. So what you said there was like an early adoption of this, like at a very early level, like almost like at the academy level or shortly thereafter. You get your basics, and then you need to move into something that is a little bit more practical. And I agree with that 100%. I have witnessed some academy stuff, and it's, for a lot of it, I'm like, that would not be appropriate, in the 2 weeks or 10 days is what it is. Again, limit that to hours, and then you think about how much time is spent in front of a PowerPoint, how much time you're talking to them, and how many reps do they get. I don't know if that's appropriate. I don't know if that's possible, right? And to do it, to get any progress or value out of that. However, once you get through that and you go through your administrative qualification, right? You've passed the academy qualification. What's the pipeline now? What do things look like? So what you're saying there is those firearms instructors need to be implementing this fairly early on, where and when appropriate. And it's just like anything else. Like, it needs to be regressed. Like, we're not talking about, it's 10 to 15 rounds, right? And that's what we're doing. We're building on it, while also covering the fundamentals, while also covering the dry fire pieces and all that kind of stuff. Man, that is a complete, I don't know, that's like a total paradigm shift, right? In how law enforcement has been training. But again, to the point, like, I think there's several agencies, several departments, several instructors out there that are attempting to do this. Some with a lot of support from their administrative staff, and some not so much. But it seems to be making its way through, and it's encouraging for me to see, all the way up to what we were talking about there, which is like law enforcement sponsored or law enforcement dominant events where these guys are showing up and actually getting to do that. These are oftentimes instructors or officers, out there, in their own agencies doing this stuff. I totally encourage that, because I've seen the benefits, and the biggest benefit is the confidence you see in people with their handling of the firearms and themselves. Which again, we go back to body-worn camera footage. You can see who is and who isn't. It's pretty clear if you know what you're looking at there.
The confidence and the competence.
Yes,
that's the big takeaway. But I also think it's important that firearms instructors are pushing themselves. That's the other big thing. Like, we would have, a day or two a year that the ordnance team would go out and we would just train. And I'm like, okay, these guys have been doing this, but you've been teaching it, can you do this? And then we would start pushing each other. And that's also important, because you as a firearms instructor do not want to get stagnant, because depending on where you are, I don't know how a lot of other states work, but most states that I know, once you go to firearms instructor and you get that piece of paper, like, you are an expert at firearms.
Again, another administrative process.
Right. And you go, are you though? I mean, when's the last time as a firearms instructor did you go and take a class? Did you really look at this and say, okay, all right, I'm still on it. I still have this, or I can still explain this and do these things that I'm trying to get guys to do. And if you're not able to, it's okay. It's time to hang it up and move on.
Yeah, find something else. Like, I agree with that. I see that actually locally. We have, again, I live in a major metropolitan area with a lot of cities, a lot of well-known cities. I'm
Yeah.
in San Jose. We got Oakland. We've got San Francisco, and then we've got everything in between. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of cities in between those three cities. If it's kind of triangulated on the map, and there are definitely agencies out there where you've got younger. When I say younger, I don't mean like 2-year, 3-year cops, and we're talking people that have been on for a while that are now wanting to take the job in the firearms unit, whatever that happens to look like for them, and make some changes. And they want that job and they want to keep that job. And they don't want to keep it just so that they can ride off into the sunset and do the same thing that we've always done because this is the way we've always done it kind of thing. They are making those changes, and it's not fun for a while. It's not fun. And oftentimes they got to take a pay cut to do this, which is a challenge. Like, who's going to want that thing? But again, I think what you were saying is if you build the culture within the culture, then it's like a coveted job. Like, this is cool guy stuff, right? We get to do the fun stuff. I get all the free ammo I want. I get to shoot all the time, and I get to impact people, and I get to see the result, in obviously the immediate progression. But, now we're starting to see, like you said, in actual OISs and things like that, where things are starting to turn out and looking much better. I'm going to shift gears again on you. Let's talk about again, you're retired, but you talked about all the different units that you work for and the different specialties that you've done. I imagine for a guy that has been on that long, then you wind up in the FTO program, you've got some new people coming in, right? You're going to be responsible for bringing those people up. And those people now are probably, 8, 10, 15-year veterans on agencies and whatnot, and and they're probably now in the same position you were in, and seeing the new folks come in, and so this is kind of a hot topic, just with new quote unquote new generation of people, the new generation of, I want to say generation, but kind of this new paradigm of policing, call it community policing, whatever we're calling it, and what's going on. So I wonder what you're seeing out there with. When you're talking to guys that are still in it and doing that job, what their challenges are. And I'm not doing this to rehash or re-talk about, the challenges that exist with hiring, with putting butts in the seats, and with a millennial generation that's now aging up, and now we're getting into, some of this newer generation of folks. But my specific question is just about what are we seeing in terms of practices going on out there that are being successful for people that were the same practices that you were using, 25 years ago, or maybe not so 20 years ago, that still hold tried and true? Like the game really hasn't changed that much, or has it? And so that's kind of a large question, but I'm wondering if you can answer it for me, because I know you're super connected still.
Yeah. I think the term, and you used it right, like calling it community policing. Man, we were calling it community policing when I started, even when I was reserve in the mid 90s, like, the bosses were like, just get out in the community and go talk to people and get out of the car, go walk around. And we did. And it was community policing. I think now, though, the bosses want you to talk longer to people. This term de-escalation of talking, and that's what a lot of guys see it as, is, well, I have to talk to them longer. In some cases you can, you know what I mean? I think that's the big one. And listening to what guys are saying, they're like, well, they want us, the term is, or what they'll say is, they want us to talk them to death. And I'm like, okay, if I can talk to a dude, what's 5 or 10 more minutes? Now, sometimes we know, hey, that just doesn't, I could talk to this person until I'm blue in the face, and they are not going to change their attitude. Right. You're just not going to. And then it turns into the, I've asked you, I've told you, and now I'm going to make you. I understand that, but I think people want us to talk more. And what I'm hearing is that, and what I saw towards the end of my career, that's what they really wanted. Well, we want you to talk to them a little bit longer. Okay. And again, cops are like, well, what's the time frame? I'm like, dude, it's not a time frame. Like, you should know what's about to happen. But
okay, so I'm going to pause you here for a second. So I want you to talk to them longer. What do you want me to talk to them about? Is the question that I would have, and I think this is the one that people they don't understand. Like they don't get it. I think it's officers that don't like. You're telling them to talk to them longer. What am I supposed to be talking to them about? I'm not quite sure. Like this person's just getting more heated, or we're in the exact same places when we started. You know, kind of thing. Or on occasion, talking to them longer may be helpful, as you stated. But what are we supposed to be talking to them about? That's the question that I have, because I see some of those conversations. I've been involved in some of those conversations. I'm like, why are we still talking about this? Like we're talking about the same stuff we were talking about 2 years ago to the same freaking person, right? And nothing has changed. So that's my question. What are we supposed to be talking to them about for longer?
I think they want them to talk longer because they're, again, this is my 0.02 cents. I've been out a year, but you know, still talking to guys and guys that are in it. And even when I was there a year ago, they want you to talk longer so they can say, the admin specifically can say, well, hey, he talked to him for 45 minutes. And then this is where we ended up. Instead of saying 15 minutes into it, exactly what you said. Hey, from 15 minutes to 45 minutes. So that 30 minutes that I talked to this person, it was going to end this way. What they want you to be able, this is my opinion, what they want you to be able to say is, well, I talked to him for 30 minutes. He, as the suspect or the person I was dealing with, had all of that time to just do what I was asking him to do. Instead of, well, you forced him into the cuffs, or you forced this use of force situation, which, you know, it created it to where you had to, you know, use force or taser them or whatever. That's my opinion. You know, I may be wrong, but that's what I saw, and that's what I still hear from a lot of guys across the country.
So I've kind of heard the same, you know, when I ask this question, and I try to be very fair and objective in asking people that are retired and did it for a long time, that are near retirement, that are people in the middle, you know, wherever they are in their journey, and then put people, you know, folks that are at the front end of it. And I have a unique opportunity to do that. And I'm very grateful for that, because, you know, for me, I'm always trying to pull all the pieces together and get where the different levels lie in this. And here's what I get by that. I think when you're the talking and the, like, I should be able to solve this problem with words kind of, or through the talk kind of mentality creates all kinds of situations that I don't know that the younger officer, or, you know, particularly the public, doesn't understand what that's doing in terms of potentially creating a worse situation. And then you have the other side of it was, well, oh my God, that was so aggressive. They went immediately to a use of force and handcuffs in too fast of a time. So what is the right time, and how do you make those decisions? And when you're constantly worried about solving the conversation for however long it takes, 30 to 45 minutes. I mean, that just seems like ridiculous amount of time to me. Like, I'm here for a reason.
It is a lot.
We should be able to resolve this, right? And whatever it is, either it's resolved and everybody's calmed down and we're walking away. There's not a violation of the law, right? There's no danger to anybody, including the person that I'm talking to or whatever else. Like, let's be on our way. We might actually know, I'll be back here in 10 minutes, or I'll be back here in an hour, kind of thing. But there's no reason for me to stick around here any longer. There's no conversation to be had, but there's also no law that's been broken here. But what it creates then is like, I'll just talk longer, which then creates this hesitation to want to do anything. I feel like the longer you're in that conversation and the longer it gets to wherever it's getting to, and that could be an up, a down, a back up again, a back down. It creates a worse opportunity for when the use of force has to happen for it to be bad. And so you created, 100%. You put all this time into the equation here where bad things can happen. And we could go down a laundry list of what those things are. But I see this as being problematic for today's young officer coming out and then going into a situation with an FTO where an FTO has been told, we need to do a better job at talking to people longer. And so he's trying to get this FTO to talk to, or this new officer to talk to people longer. But that person knows damn well, this is not going in the right direction here. And at some point, somebody's going to have to do something. And you want the officer to be able to make that position, but you've also set them up for failure, saying, hey, basically, you need to talk this person out of this situation. And so ultimately then it has to be multiple people need to get involved in this, and the FTO has to step in and basically contradict almost, I would assume, have to contradict what they just told that person or just told that new officer. Like now I have to jump in and I have to take hold here. And so there's confliction going on with regard to how we're training people and how we're actually handling law enforcement on the street. And then what I think that evolves into, that hesitation is like, I'm just not going to address that. I'm just not going to address this at all. I'm going to kind of let it go. Is my perception totally skewed and am I completely off base, or is there some truth in this?
No, there's some truth in it for sure. And again, the other issue is a lot of these newer guys that are coming on and gals that are coming on is they don't know how to talk to people in the sense, because everything they've done for the last, let's say, 10 years of their life has been in a cell phone, and they're used to talking over text instead of talking person to person.
Yep.
And even they don't talk on the phone that much. Everything is through text. So the skills to be able to talk to people is not where they should be getting into this job at times.
I think that's in life, man. I witness it every day. Just go to your local coffee shop or restaurant or retail store or whatever else. It's a little alarming.
Right.
So turn this into law enforcement side, it makes sense that it would be nearly the same.
Right. And then now you're dealing with people that a lot of times when they're calling the police, they're at their worst, what they believe at their worst. Even if you're dealing with a homeless person, somebody calls about a homeless person, the caller is upset that this homeless person is out there on the street. Well, okay, cool. Let's go over and talk to him. They want you to do something immediately with him. Well, I have to go talk to him for a minute. And now to me, that's where a lot of the conversation just starts of like, hey man, listen, they're going to call about you because they don't want you here. How can I help you? How can I help? Listen, this is the boundaries. This is where we're going to play inside, the boundaries. Listen, let's go over here. Can I take you to a shelter? Can I, let me go over and get you to McDonald's or wherever and get you a cup of coffee and a sandwich, and then we just move on. Sometimes guys try to talk, well, I think he has a mental health issue. We're not here for that.
That's
that's a totally different thing, but it's rough, man. These guys that are out there doing it now with, the way that they're changing the laws so quickly on them now, it's rough. It's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I see it as a citizen, just Joe citizen, on a regular basis. I think what it turns into is we don't want to get confrontational, confrontation is a thing. Like, it has to be a thing. Yes. And again, going back to the internet world and how confrontation happens there, with very little to no consequence. I can kind of say whatever. I can do it in 3 sentences and I can walk away. That isn't the job, and it's killing society. But I also think it's really hurting policing, and I think the community the communities are finally starting to realize this, that the trying to talk somebody into maybe a potential better situation for them, or what's perceived is a better potential situation for them, is not working. And what now you're seeing is people blowing up about it. Like, you didn't, and that's going to create issues for law enforcement officers coming into, like, well, now there is a use of force situation, and I have to apply this, whatever this thing is. And like, I'm not hesitating anymore. I'm going to go do it. And they're being bashed for that. Right. And it's like, I called you and I wanted this handled, but I didn't want you to handle it that way. And so this winds up, again, front page news, whatever else. And so this, going back to the shooting piece, now we're starting to see like what's really popular on the internet. I don't know if this is, maybe you could tell me. What I see is a lot of people that are like, when they're being asked to get out of the car or even just provide ID on a traffic stop, it's turning into a something that it didn't need to turn into in the first place. And so one half of the audience is going, it's a basic traffic stop. Why are you being such a dick? Like, and then the other half is going, just do what you're told, man. Like, this could be over so fast, right? Like, we could get to the other side, but there isn't any middle ground on this. And then again, now it's like, well, now you're being lawfully ordered to get out of the car, depending on the state you live in and the thing that happened or whatever that led up to this, you see 30 seconds of the entire event, by the way. So you don't really know, right? It's often coming out later. Somebody will finally show the whole video and be like, oh, but that narrative already ran down the road, and that already was headline news 3 days ago, and everybody's forgotten about it. My point being is that a new thing, or is this is this a new thing, or is this kind of how it's been, and we're just seeing more of it now?
So it's been around for a long time. I mean, most of my career, you would see it every once in a while. Most of the time, those were people that were anti-government that were doing that, saying they were traveling and doing a lot of other things.
Yeah.
Now, what I'm seeing, and even talking to guys, it's happening more because they know people can get away with it.
Yeah.
First and foremost, administrators are not backing their officers. They're so fast to go, well, yeah, the officer, I understand he didn't violate policy. He didn't violate the law. However, he should have talked to you longer. Well, when you make that statement, you're automatically saying that the cop was wrong.
Yep.
That's what the news media runs with. The other thing that's happening is, in that same parallel, is they have been teaching guys, well, if he doesn't want to get out of the car, you can't make him. And I'm like, no, you can. Absolutely. It's Mims versus Pennsylvania. That's the law, right? You can look it up. It's Mims versus Pennsylvania. And the law says, essentially, if the officer orders you out of the car, you have to get out of the car. Everybody in the vehicle has to get out of the vehicle, right? So when you have your administrators coming out and saying, you can't order them out of the car.
That's not legally correct.
That's correct. So now what is happening, and this is what we're seeing over the last 5 years specifically, is now people are like, well, I don't have to follow the law, because they also know the bigger problem is, your administrator is not backing your officers, which causes the officers not to want to go do things. But also you have the prosecutors and the judges. They're not holding these people to, and I don't want to say it's not holding their feet to the fire, obviously, but they're just not. They're not. There's no
accountability doesn't exist.
That's right. Accountability is gone, and they can do whatever they want. And you how many times have we seen people who have committed, pretty violent crimes,
egregious,
and
shit.
then very egregious stuff, and they're getting out of jail, 4, 5, 6 hours later, and then the very next day they're going out and they're murdering somebody, or they're committing sexual assaults or something like that. You're like, hey man, the cops are doing what we have to do. There were a few times, usually juveniles, we would take juveniles down to the jail because they had committed some robberies or whatever, and they had some guns on them. And there were times that, like, literally we were dropping them off and dropped them off. They got in, we were finishing up the paperwork or just like putting in a quick note on the MDT in the computer in the cruiser, and you see them walking out the door with their parent or grandparent. You're like, how can this happen? Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? And now that's why you're seeing such a rise in juvenile crime, because all these juveniles know, all these kids know, doesn't matter. They're not going to do anything to me. And that's the bigger issue.
Yeah, it's problematic. I want to just get your take on it, because again, if you're paying attention at all, you're just seeing a lot more of this now. And I wonder, am I just seeing more of it because it's being pushed to me more? And has this always been a problem? But you're right. It seems to be, it's not always juveniles, but certainly the juveniles tend to get themselves in trouble. They have a smarter mouth. I think they have there's less liability for them. As you just said, they're going to get out, with relatively little to no consequence. But this goes back to the conversation piece, and like, how long do we need to have this conversation for as things continue to escalate, when this person is clearly not going to do the things that they should be doing? And I'm not saying that every traffic stop is is a good traffic stop or whatever. I'm acutely aware of the good stuff and the bad stuff. And when I'm unsure, I ask questions, which is why I'm asking them now. But you sit there and it just seems to go up and up and up and up. And then the next thing you know, you've got a wrestling match happening with a 16-year-old on the side of the road where and that looks really bad, man. It looks really bad. And so again, I'm asking I ask the questions like, is this something that's new, or has this been going on and we're just seeing more of it? And it's probably the same. We're just seeing less accountability to it, or
Yes.
and it's I want to say it's encouraging people, it's emboldening people to continue to do this, or behave that way. Really rough for me. I just look at it and I go, man, if my old man got the call, like,
oh my gosh,
and if my mom got the call, like, dude, I'm gonna get my butt whooped for this, like, and that's the reason I didn't do those things, right? It wasn't because the officer was telling me to. I'd much rather deal with the officer than my parents at home or my dad, for sure, right?
Go ahead, sorry.
It's just I don't know. It's mind-boggling to me, and it's again, when you come back to the recruiting, the newer generation. The younger officers, I'm befuddled on what they think they're supposed to be doing out there, and how they're supposed to be doing it.
Well, and then there's another issue of it's also, this comes back to trainers and instructors or even FTOs, but this has also been pushed down from administrators, right? There's this term, and I don't know if you've heard this or not, but it's called lawful but awful. You've ever heard that term?
That one I'm not familiar with, but
so
please educate me again. I'm going to ask.
Yeah. No, great. This is good, right? So here's what it basically means is what you did and the way that you did it was lawful.
Mm-hmm.
However, the way it looked was awful, right? And I'm like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but my rebuttal to that is, I've never seen a use of force that looks pretty.
Yeah, exactly.
They all look bad. And this kind of reminded me when you were talking about, wrestling the 16-year-old on the side of the highway, that you had to drag out, whatever it was. You're right. It does look bad because, I mean, in all the fist fights that I was in as a kid or whatever else, and when I was boxing and doing all that other stuff, they never looked pretty. They never were, very choreographed or whatever. So they are going to look bad. But what it comes back to is the administration should be looking at these officers, reading the reports, and saying, okay, did he violate department policy? No. Check. Next thing, did he violate your state laws? No. Check. Did he violate the Constitution of the United States? No. Okay. Then you go to that person who was wanting to come in and file the complaint and go, well, he did this or he did on that. He stood on my head and blah, blah. Okay, hold on. I hear what you're saying. The video does not prove that whatsoever. That's not what happened, right? So, yeah, I understand that you were upset. However, you were the one that dealt with this officer for 45 minutes, right? Let's just say 45. You dealt with him for 45 minutes. He gave you 33 minutes to knock that off.
Right. To hand you his ID or whatever. Get out of the car.
Yeah, or whatever. Right. And then you chose, the officer didn't, you chose to continue to do this. So he had to do that. I understand that you're upset. But guess what? Did you violate the law? Yeah, I did. Okay. So here's another thing. You said that the officer stood on your head, right? Yes. Do you understand that that's a lie? Yes. You swore to that and you wrote that down in a statement. Well, it was a mistake. No, sorry. Now, what should be happening?
Now you're playing the victim. Yep.
Yes, they're playing the victim. And this is where administrators, and I will specifically talk about Ohio, right? Administrators don't want you to charge these people with falsification, even though that's what they did. No, you charge them because they lied. And then that gets out there and you go, hey man, if you go deal with, Main Street Police Department, whatever, don't lie because they're going to charge you when they catch you lying. If you lie against an officer and this is what you did, now they're going to charge you. So don't do that over there. And that's how you start to bring society back. Again, you still have all these conversations. You do all the community policing stuff we've been doing for 50 years. It's really been there. We just like to call it different things. You know what I mean? But listen, there are consequences to your action. Now, having said all that, if it's shown that the officer violated a policy, he violated the law, violates the Constitution, hey man, I'll be the first one to go,
got to hold that dude accountable. Yeah,
that's it. You got to. I understand that. Yeah. I understand. Yep. I'm completely on board with that. but the vast majority of the time, the cops are doing the right thing.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I
agree with both statements, but this goes back to what I was saying before, is like, do they actually know? With all the laws that are changing and you're not prosecuting this person. Am I doing the right thing or not? And in the moment, in that 5-minute, 15-minute, 30, 45-minute conversation or whatever, like, if the question comes up, it's like, what am I supposed to do here? If that comes up, like, we've got a big problem, and I feel like that's kind of where we're at.
No, I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah. So without, again, belaboring that point, I just want to get your take on it, because, again, with as many years as you've had and all the things that you've had going on, and kind of watching it from the outside now, looking back in, and I'm sure having conversations, I knew you'd have a take on this. And I got to be honest, this is not dissimilar to a lot of the other people I talk to that are frustrated by it, but don't have to deal with it on a daily basis anymore, but see the problems for what the problems are, and they're not new problems. They're just being escalated by things a lot of times outside of the officer's control.
Absolutely.
And again, that comes back to training, that comes back to self-confidence, that comes back to what's happening at the academy, what happens after the academy, and all the things that need to be layered on. I mean, I've said this before, I'm acutely aware. Police departments and officers have a lot of things to do. They got a lot of things they're supposed to be good at. But when you're making it more difficult for them to be good at anything, right? And you're knife handing them or not holding them accountable when they should be held accountable, right? Whatever that happens to be, a qualification, a standard, a test, their behavior, right? They're following the law or not following the law, and you're not doing the same for the citizens, and we wind up in the situation we're in. So,
absolutely.
All right, changing gears again. Let's talk about what you're doing with your business now. So now you got a little bit of a road show going on, man. Let's talk about it. Let's hear about what you're doing out there.
Yeah, so I've had this company. It's called Mowery Tactical Concepts, or MTC. I've had that name since 2015, 2016. I was working for a couple different companies, and so I had my own, just kind of, paperwork wise, it was just easier. And so back in January, after I retired in October, January of this year, 2025, I launched my company, and starting to get some traction. I'm teaching practical shooting classes for cops. That's been very successful. I've been doing some one-day classes here in Ohio specifically for that. Just kind of an introduction to practical shooting for LE. That has been very, very successful. Guys have seen like, oh, okay, I see where you're going with this. And then I have a 3-day firearms instructor development class.
Okay.
Now we deep dive big time on that. Guys come in, not knowing anything or having some stuff. And I tell them right off the bat, I'm like, hey, this is your training. Throw the BS flag if you like, but we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. I also bring in another buddy of mine who's has a doctorate in PT, physical therapy.
Okay.
And he does the movement piece for me.
Love it.
So I have him come in, and I'm specifically giving them drills to work on how to warm up, how to move more efficiently with this gun in your hand. My biggest class really is a class I developed in 2017, 16, 17 timeframe called High Risk Vehicle Engagements. It's basically gunfighting in and around cars, and 3 kind of different areas that's happening the vast majority of the time for law enforcement. Traffic stops, guys getting ambushed, and or changing the paradigm on how we do high risk or felony stops. So those are the 3 modules that we kind of cover in that class. We do in a vehicle extraction class, but I tell guys, listen, there's a lot of dudes out there that are doing vehicle extractions.
It's kind of a different thing, right? I mean, there's gunfighting around 100%. A vehicle.
Yes.
Or having to make a felony stop, and then there's extraction, which is a different thing again. Like,
it's its own animal.
We can't put all the things in one box here. There's several boxes that need to be unpacked. I love that.
Yeah. So then I do some active shooter training as well. I've got a 2-day or a 3-day active shooter class that I do as well, with some live fire and force on paper and some stuff like that. So, and carbine stuff. So
I love it. So you're hitting a lot of different angles. It's very practical for the person, again, officers that need to use it. So it's law enforcement centric, correct, at a lot of levels. I love the 1-day intro to practical shooting, because I think, again, like getting time and space and finance together to be able to do these kind of things for people, it can be very limiting. Sometimes it's an excuse. but it can be
Yes.
very limiting. So being able to give them like this introduction to something that then leads them down the path to the next thing, maybe coming to another course, maybe it's going out and actually shooting a match or going down to the range more often or whatever to practice the skills. I think the one-day format was a thing for a long time, and then things got expanded, right? Because there's so much more that you want to, we talked about this before.
Right.
Like I want to teach you all of these things, but what do we really have time for? More importantly, what can you truly absorb, right, in the amount of time that we have that's going to be the most useful? What's the effective dosage, that I can give you inside this time so that you can walk away from here and actually use this stuff? And I think, so this speaks to the training mentality, which is the last question I think I have for you. And that is, I think training is being talked about more in my experience, around this than it ever has been in a good way, in a productive way. And I think it's largely being driven by the commercial market. This is you now, right? This is somebody from the outside who's really driving this stuff, and forcing people to look at things differently while at the same time encouraging them to do things a little bit differently. And this started for you, obviously, while you were inside, and now you're outside, and so you're able to talk about it at a different level. And all the things that I heard you saying, as close as you are to, you haven't been retired that long, there's going to be quite a bit of relevance to this. But at the same time, like, it still boils down to foundations, right? Fundamental stuff. And it's interesting to me that it's the fundamentals that are now needing to be taught by the outside, again, commercial, third-party companies like yours that that are going into these places. And what I'm also seeing with that is agencies are way more open to having guys like you come in to train that. I'm wondering if you're seeing that trend and if that's where some of the success is coming with your business here.
It is. It's a lot of guys are starting to say or see that, or agencies as a whole, like, hey, I don't have these answers. Or, the last time that I went through a firearms class was when I went through firearms instructor class, like 6 years ago or whatever. Hey, there's different ways that we can go about these things. And you're definitely seeing those things change. It's a slow change. In law enforcement, we always want things, A, we hate change, but B, right? When we do see it, we want to put the brake on it as much as we possibly can. So it's going to take a little bit of time. But you are starting to see it. It's like, okay, this is catching on, and more departments are bringing in outside guys. And I think that also goes back to, you're never an expert in your own agency. So then, I was out in Washington State earlier this year and doing my vehicle class, and we were out there, and one of the instructors was like, hey, I have a question about this practical shooting thing. And I'm like, okay, go.
Practical shooting thing. I love that.
Yeah, it was great, right? And so for an hour, we talked about practical shooting, because he saw me demoing, and he's like, well, you're moving this way, and you keep mentioning practical shooting. And I'm like, because it's the way, dude. Like, locking out your arms and shoulders up and all this, being very stiff. I'm like, that doesn't lean to efficient movement. You can't. So,
so again, super encouraging. And again, I have a unique perspective from the outside looking in, but I get to talk to folks like you to kind of see what you're doing. Here's the thing, and I hope this doesn't sound insulting, but it's the same stuff. Like, and what I mean by that is that you guys are all fundamentally saying the same things. And so after a while, you know what I mean? Like, there's maybe a little bit of a different style. The curriculum looks and feels a little bit different, but when you break it down, you deconstruct it, we are talking about the same, you guys are talking about the same things. And again, there's so much pie out there, right? Like, there's like, and one of the things you mentioned earlier, going around the competitive shooting, particularly for law enforcement, is like where you are regionally. And my point in saying that is, like, wherever you are located on the map, right, in the United States, you may have more or less access to this, but more guys like you are getting out and getting on the road. I mean, you're going from Ohio to Washington, like, you'll do this. All you got to do is reach out, like, and let's figure this out, right? And again, like, places like Washington, wherever you're going or whatever, they're not afraid to bring in other instructors. And you're seeing instructors, again, going back to the market JBS conversation, are working together, and they're talking about it. They're not fighting over the pie, right? They're going, hey, like what are you doing over here? How can I bring that to my area? Or if I'm going into the same area, what can you download for me in terms of what I'm walking into? I'm seeing and hearing a ton of that too, which is, again, it's kind of an evolution, because I don't think it used to be like that. I think it used to be keep your friends close and your enemies closer. Let's play everything tight to the chest. This is mine. This is what I do. You know, and I don't want anybody else to get any of this pie, but obviously there's plenty of it to go around, and more people, whatever, it's like 800,000 officers nationwide or something like that.
Right. Something like that.
Like everybody needs this stuff, like, and they could use it, to your point, like nobody's an expert in their own agency. So like bringing these outside people in. So I just think about that training mentality, and I think it gets very isolated. I was having this conversation with somebody the other day, and where cops will talk about, I'd die for the guy standing next to me. You know, I'd die for my buddies. And then the question comes up, it's like, yeah, I hear you saying that, but how come you don't train like you feel like that? And so I just want to throw that at you and maybe get your take on that statement, because that hit me pretty hard. I was like, that's interesting. We say certain things, but what are our behaviors actually saying about that thing? I don't know. You got a take on that?
Yeah, I think a lot of times guys, they say those things and they mean it in the moment, or they mean it on the call, or they mean it when they're there. But because they have so many other things going on in their life, right, with wife and kids and, you know, little league, soccer, baseball, you know, insert whatever sport.
All the things, man. It's like I was saying.
All
like
the stuff.
I get it.
Yeah,
there's priorities, man.
Yeah, it goes away when they're not at work. And you heard me say this when we were there at the Combatives Summit, is like, you don't have to be obsessive like a lot of guys can get for dry fire. And I tell guys when we're starting out, I'm like, you know, bringing it back full circle about talking about dry fire, right? Like, you do this 3 times a week, 5 to 10 minutes at a time, you're going to be a lot better. Now, if you want to worry about getting classed up and all those stuff, then you're just going to become more obsessed about it. But if you're going to say, I would die for my buddy, well, how about we talk about not dying?
Yep.
How about that? Let's talk about, no. We're not going to die. I'm not going to die. Scott, you're not going to die when we're on this run. We're going to be able to do what we need to do and handle it. And because you and I have been dry firing together for 5 or 10 minutes, 3 times a week together, and learning through the process.
Yeah.
You know? So
what I take away from a lot of what you're saying, what I took away from your core, or your section over there at Combatives Summit, and this is some of the things that I kind of took away from some of the other instructors, is you mentioned like not being obsessive, right? And you don't necessarily have to be obsessed with this thing. What you need to be obsessed with is just making sure you're getting better at something, right? Whatever that is, and divide up your time a bit. And going back to John Valentine, he said something the other day which resonated with me, and this is what dawned on me too, kind of early on, and trying to get into all the things and learn all the things. Like, if I'm going to do this, I have to do all of this stuff, right? I have to have all of this gear. I have to go to all these courses. I have to go to all these matches. Like, I got to get in front of all these instructors and whatever. And what I learned was what he said, and I don't know if I'd ever it ever kind of occurred to me in my brain, but it was like, you'd be surprised at how little you actually need to get better. You know, when you're talking about this stuff, like, courses are good, right? And how much are you really getting out of that course? And the good instructors are able to, like you said, deconstruct it down. And depending on the audience if you're in an instructor development course, that's going to go a few different, at a few different levels deeper, right? Because we need to cover this stuff. But when you're that person that's just like, I know I need to be better at these things, being obsessed with, I have to get all of it done, and looking at the end state versus like, what do I need now to get better? And you'll find, this is what I found, like, it's actually not that much, right? And so it's like, you don't need to be like a GM shooter, right? No. Nobody's saying that. Nobody's saying you need to be a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Right? Nobody's saying you need to be a GM in handcuffing, right? Or whatever it happens to be. They just say, look, there's some stuff you need, and if you just put a little bit of time into this, you'd be surprised at how little you actually need to get better at this, or at least know what you need to get better at and how to go out and acquire the resources, the skills, go to the places, or whatever it is to actually get better. And that's what again, that was kind of a moment in my brain just the other day, but I was reflecting back on all the kind of the things that I've heard and I've seen and I've trained and whatever else. And that's what I got from you specifically with dry fire, was, look, man, let's not overcomplicate this shit. It isn't that hard, right? But the 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 3 days a week, like, it's really, when you look at the whole week, like, okay, I can't get to the range and shoot a match this week, right? Or next week or the week after. But I think the way you built it up was like, if you did 15 minutes, like 4 days a week, that's an hour, right? Of training, right? Over 4 weeks, that's 4 hours of training that you could have done it in your underwear and your socks, right? In your garage or living room or your backyard or whatever else. And that's how little you need to see the thing appear for you out on the range when you do live fire. And then when you go live fire, now you know what to go back when you put your underwear and your socks back on and actually work the thing, whatever that is, whatever you discovered. And so it's actually very little. And you can have all the cool, like, get on Ben Stoger's website and get his dry fire targets. They're awesome. I got them. Like, you can go there. You
absolutely. I have a ton of them.
There's all kinds of things you could get. Like, you could get you get dummy rounds, right? I'd highly recommend that for people, right?
Absolutely.
It changes the game a little bit, right? But you don't need a $5,000 handgun to do this, right? You don't need it. My point is this, like, it's very minimal at the end. And I think when people hear this, going back to the beginning of this conversation, they think they need all of these things. And what the great instructors will tell you is what this took was just a little bit for little bits of time. It's like the train a little, a lot kind of principle. To really move the needle forward for yourself. And it doesn't mean, again, you have to go out and shoot matches every weekend or even once a month. If you can do that, fantastic. But at least commit yourself to something, and the little bits, really help out. And again, that was a big takeaway for me when I was listening to you. It really kind of fired me back up about, oh shit, there's some stuff that I've been neglecting, right? In this particular little bit of time that I can spend or I do spend, like, how can I make that more effective for myself? And I think you do a really good job of putting that together. And I'm sure I haven't had an opportunity to train with you outside of that, but I'm sure that's what people are getting from your courses. So if they want more Dustin Mowery in their life, like, where do they go, man? Where do they go? How do they get in touch with you? What's the website? All the good stuff.
The website's MoweryTacticalConcepts.com. You can find me on IG, Dustin Mowery 337. That was my unit number. So you can find me there. Hit me up on IG. Send me an email on my website. Ask me, my website lists basically everything that we just kind of talked about class-wise, what I'll do. And I have done some specialty classes for guys. They're like, hey, I'm looking for this. Okay, yes, we can do that. But I don't get into like sniper classes and breaching. I mean, I can get you to those dudes, but that was not my jam. You know what I mean? Like, I tell people, I'm like, hey, I'll get you to shoot a pistol better, how to shoot rifles better, active shooter response and vehicle stuff. So that's the best way to get a hold of me, brother, is get me on IG or go to my website.
Again, super simple.
Definitely respond to you.
Yeah,
very simple.
Super simple. And I know you to be pretty active on Instagram. And very responsive. You engage with a lot of other folks out there. You talk to a lot of the same folks that you talk to them way more frequently than I do. Those are the same people that answered my questions or that answer my questions, whether it be online or offline in this format or otherwise. There's just too many good resources out there, and
absolutely,
I'm grateful that you spent as much time with me today, chatting through this, because I'd seen you at the summit, and you were on my list for a very long time. I took advantage of the opportunity, and that's just I think that's kind of speaks to this, is like, hey, I got this opportunity, I'm going to get after it. Like, what can I do in terms of contributing and gaining from this conversation? So I'm certain there's folks that are going to listen to this and be like, yep, I need to do a little bit better job at this, or I hadn't thought about that before. Maybe we approach some things, and you just gave them an easy way to contact you if they have questions. The guys, again, those guys that I talk to, your name comes up quite frequently, and I know you guys are constantly bouncing ideas off one another and just trying to leave the world a better place than you found it. So
absolutely,
keep doing that, Dustin. I appreciate you, man.
I appreciate it. Yeah, for sure, man. And if you want to get together and go shoot, let's go do it.
I know.
We'll go shoot.
That's the worst part about what I do, because I frequently get invites like that, and I'm super, that's very gracious of you. And I guarantee you, like, given the opportunity, it's always about time and place for me. I mean, people listen to this to be like, dude, that dude, he's so lucky. He's got these guys that are always inviting him out. And it's very true. It's very true. I am. And it's not lost to me that I'm very lucky to get those invites, but I will absolutely take you up on that in the future. If you're ever out here on the West Coast, you make sure and let me know. And if I'm ever in the Ohio neck of the woods, I will look you up, dude. Thank you.
Yeah, sounds good, man, for sure. I think I'm going to be there. I think I'll be in California this spring sometime. So,
do you know where? SoCal, NorCal?
I'll be in SoCal, I think.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we're going to be in SoCal. I'll hit you up. I'll let you know.
All right. I appreciate that.
We'll talk offline.
Okay, buddy. All right. Thanks again for your time, Dustin. Best of luck to you.
Absolutely.
And all the things that you're doing. Stay safe out there and keep doing what you're doing, man.
You too, brother. I appreciate the invite. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.